UAPs, Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena. Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, time travelers in origin, or are they simply a result of top-secret military black projects, false flag alien invasion psyop, drones, or other human-made aircraft? Join UFO historian Don Ecker, MUFON State Director for New York Chris DePerno, retired veteran pilot Commander Cobra, and well-esteemed host and researcher Martin Willis as they discuss the latest news and topics regarding UAPs with a no-holds-barred approach on UAP Crossfire.
Well, good evening, everyone, the greatest audience on the planet. We are so glad to have you here. Welcome to UAP Crossfire with my great host, Chris DePerno, Martin Willis, and Don Ecker. Before we jump in too far, I want to throw a big shout out to our deployed military service members and the contractors that are deployed downrange. It has been a tumultuous 3-4 weeks. Obviously, the recent events with loss of life is absolutely devastating to their families and their mates in their units, and our hearts and support go out to them. But I do want all that are listening to know that we, and I know many of the members of the greatest audience on the planet support them, and they are not far from our thoughts and prayers and best wishes. Tonight, before I jump in and talk with the co-host, I want to put a quick shout out to the War Zone. They can be found at twz.com. That's a new upgrade that they just did this week to their website. Tyler, who is the editor-in-chief of the site, director of the site, has been a longtime friend. He was on my previous show a number of times. He also, at one point, was doing a number of reports. One of the articles that we're going to be speaking about tonight, one of the source documents, came from the War Zone, and they just recently made this major change and upgrade. So if you have any interest in these matters of military technology, as well as the pursuit of the military with UAP, it's a great site for that, and they have a great background on that. Now, working around the column, Martin, we'll start with you. How has your last couple of weeks been? I mean, we've all been chatting while I was out traveling. How are you, sir? And how are things in South Carolina?
Everything's great. It seems like there's a lot going on in the UFO world. You know, I did end up having Tim Burchett on my show last week, and it was very well received. He's a real character, funny guy. But I really think he's earnest. I think he's pushed the needle forward a little bit on this topic. However, I've had, even a good friend write me some negative things, getting political. He wasn't political at all on my show. He didn't talk about politics. We talked about the UAP and what it's going to take, to get government transparency. And my hats are off to him. I don't care if what party he's in, what he's doing, otherwise I care about what he's doing about this topic, because it affects us who are looking into this. And so I congratulate his work. I think he's doing a great job.
Well, always the best wishes to Tim and anyone who's trying to push the needle. And I think that's a nice tie into one of the aspects we're going to talk, because it's a part of the government. It's out of the Office of the Inspector General that we're going to react to as one of the opening parts of it. Let me swing over to Don Ecker. How are you, sir? And how are things in the West Coast and the lovely hills of California?
Well, we are currently undergoing the first of two major storms that are blowing.
It's the river, right? It's the atmospheric river connection that's coming up.
The Pineapple Express, yes. And I woke up this morning. It was raining cats and dogs. And right now we've got a pause, but we're looking for more rain later. The problem with that is California has been so dry for so long that the fear is flash flooding.
Yeah, and then the slides, right?
Oh, yeah.
The mudslides from the parched earth.
Yes. And where
water
I'm
was-
at, which is in a canyon,
Uh-oh.
it's been it's not been too bad. But hey, my wife and I have been here since 1994, so it's not the first time that we've seen this type of thing. I mean, my God, we got run out twice by wildfires.
Yes, I remember
Okay?
that.
Yeah. So,
But
you know,
you did carry on the show. You were like the French Foreign Legion. You guys did man the ramparts right to the end, and then you moved the ensign, and then
Yes.
bravely came back. And then I remember the triumphancy of your neighbor providing toilet paper at one point. That was another great moment of Decker and
Yeah.
Vicky adventures in California.
Yes. Oh,
Did you go
well,
back to that person during COVID?
I'm sorry.
Did you go back
What?
to that person during COVID to get the
Oh
toilet?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
my neighbor right across the street. So, and 2 weeks ago we rescued a lost Chihuahua,
Oh wow!
Oh,
a little old lady up the road. The wind blew her door open. Her little Chihuahua was gone for 2 days, and
Wow!
she didn't think he was
I
going
would
to be
imagine that
Ah.
something would have
around.
taken that chihuahua out. That's amazing.
Yeah. But a guy came by and he had this little Chihuahua. He said, "I just found this dog. Do you know who it belongs to?" Well, we did. So,
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
it was happy endings all the way around.
that's
But
so awesome.
yeah, and I'm really anxious to get into the 2 articles that Commander Cobra and Martin Willis put out this week. There's really some heavy fodder
Oh, I think so.
for thought
Well,
in that.
but let's get us the report from the Great White North, the winter playground of Satan, according to certain people that live up that way.
Yeah.
Chris DePerno, how are you, sir?
I'm happy to report. Well, first of all, I want to say my deepest sympathy to the 3 servicemen that lost
Absolutely.
their lives over there, and for all those brave men and women that are serving right now, that are going into harm's way. I hope the best for them, and I hope greater minds prevail so we do not lose anybody else. With that being said, I'm happy to report that we found Sparky the Chihuahua under 7 feet of snow. He's currently being thawed out. Hopefully.
Are you serious?
Yes. No, there was some dogs that were frozen. I'm not lying about that. That they went out in the snow and they actually got lost. And the owners had to go out with shovels and literally dig out a path for the dog to get back in the house, because the dogs, and then a lot of the owners says their dogs are taking dumps in the house because they say, "I'm not going back out there." I mean, that's just crazy. But anyways, I'm happy to report that it is. Yeah, there we go, Sparky.
There's
One of the dogs. But they do have to actually dig a path for the dog to go do his job. But I am happy to say the snow is subsiding. We haven't had an earthquake up here like we did last year. We haven't had a torrential windstorm that we had like last year. So everybody's bracing for the next round of god awful weather in Buffalo, New York.
Well, gentlemen, we'll dive into it. I asked the audience to please drop us comments into the chat box. Sometimes I can get comments, some I can't, but Martin is the master of bringing up the interesting ones. You can always reach out to me at Commander Cobra, KGRADB @gmail, and glad to answer direct questions. I do try to get into the comments when you guys comment on there, and you are the greatest audience on the planet. What got me started on this was an article that showed up in the War Zone, and I sent it off to you guys so that we could prepare for it coming up this week. And what got me interested on this is that it quotes the Office of the Inspector General. And for those that weren't in the military, this is like the clearing authority for when things are not the check of what's going on. The IG is pretty much untouchable. I guess in the world of law enforcement, it might be considered something like a internal affairs almost kind of. They have they have really no limits to where they will look. They are tasked to bring the investigation. And the OIG was quoted that the irregular information that's come out because of competitive priorities, lack of substantive progress, and inconclusive findings drove them to make the statement that we may be setting ourselves up for a security risk by not properly addressing how UAPs are being investigated. Now, this article is packed, and anyone that can grab it from the war zone, just look for UAP by OIG. It should come right up on the search engine. It's packed with a lot of things in there, but one of the primary things that came out for me was a quote by Dr. Kirkpatrick, the recently retired leader of the AARO, who has since gone on to quite an interesting speaking tour. He's around, which is unusual for former intel types to really make themselves this visible. And in there's a remark about 570 events that were looked at, and 366 were cleared as just anomalies that were, not remarkable is the term that was used. And then about half of those that were not remarkable is talked about being balloon type events. What is interesting, even for the war zone to miss this, and the IG not to mention it, is what about the other near half that were then, by subsequent deduction, remarkable and not balloons? Now,
we can't talk about those.
I always focus on this because that's why I like rigorous investigation. That's why I like rigorous, detailed look at it, because when you come down to those that are events that are not easily discussed or laid to a particular area of what it is, that's the ones that absolutely capture my attention. And the well documented, and the better that it's documented, the better the investigation. I mean, that's the founding of you three gentlemen have always demonstrated in anything that you've researched, and that's the bedrock of how MUFON and other really quality organizations have gone forward. So let me start out with you, Chris, because I know Don's got to bring up some big guns on this at one point.
Well, I firmly believe what Tim Burchett says, that AARO is nothing more than a disinformation campaign led by the big disinformation person himself, Sean Kirkpatrick. Because Sean Kirkpatrick puts out, and I will say here, he put in his LinkedIn page that he wrote, contrary to assertions made in the hearing, Grusch has refused to speak with AARO so that some details said to have been given to Congress have not been provided to his office. And also that the hearing was insulting to the officers of the Department of Defense and the intelligence community who choose to join AARO, many with not unreasonable anxieties and about the career risks that they would entail. A Pentagon spokesman told reporters that the post was Kirkpatrick's personal opinions expressed in his capacity as a private citizen, and they declined to comment. He's just a disinformation guy, Kirkpatrick. The AARO thing is, for God's sakes, if this guy was really, really interested, he would have drove right to Kirkpatrick's house or his office and say, hey, or David Grusch's office and say, hey, I want to talk to you. I really need to know, how can we do this where you can tell me? I mean, he's in charge of AARO.
Let me make one remark there, Chris. If Dr. Kirkpatrick is correct, what I want to know, what I'd like to ask him is, then why didn't you bring Grusch to your office when he was still on the bit, when he was active duty? I assume that he's no longer active duty. Before and then after his whistleblower stash, you still could have had the private meeting with him.
Because now he has deniability, Cobra. He has the deniability to say, I never talked to the guy, because Sean Kirkpatrick comes out and says there is no evidence of aliens in what we've seen. There is no existence. There is no evidence that aliens have come to this earth. And if he talks to David Grusch, and actually gets the inside information. Now, David Grusch, of course, is second party, third party information, but that's how you start an investigation. You go and start with that. Don knows as an investigator, and as I know, some guy comes and say, hey, Chris, this guy's doing this and this and this. It's secondhand knowledge, but now you go down that path. And Sean Kirkpatrick doesn't want to go down that path because he might find the truth.
Before we go to Martin, one last parting question here, Chris. How doubtful do you throw the investigative powers that the doctor didn't take advantage of from his office, which is supposed to be charged to investigate these anomalies? You have a person that's identified within the government sources, and you don't take up for that, but you publicly come out and say that everything he talked about is not verifiable in any way. Doesn't that make your hair stand up just a tiny bit?
But to me, I take it as like I would do an investigation. It's a preliminary.
Right.
You got the preliminary information. Whether it's true or untrue, it's a starting block to go to the truth. And if you don't even start with the preliminary, as Sean Kirkpatrick did not do, it's either one, he doesn't want to do it, or two, he's incompetent to do it. So and I don't think the man is incompetent. So I purposely think that he avoided Grusch at all costs.
All right, Martin.
Well, right off the bat, I have to say someone is lying. Either these people are lying that say they've been trying to get into the office and talk to him and they won't return emails, or it's the other way around. Someone is lying, obviously. And I do believe, I have to say, I'd have to point the finger at Kirkpatrick. And the reason I would have to do that is because I could get someone on this show that will tell us exactly what he did. 4 hours and 19 minutes of testimony, firsthand witness. There was beings involved. He talked about all that. It was in a nuclear site when he was in the Air Force. He was in security. All that happened, and he testified directly to them as a firsthand witness. And all the claims are there's nothing but secondhand witnesses. One of the things I asked Burchett the other night was, does he think that firsthand witnesses will be coming forward soon? He does believe that, but I mean, still, we would love for that to happen. Michael Schellenberger also claims that he is speaking with firsthand witnesses that saying, that are talking about the NHI craft and reverse engineering. Supposedly, he has been talking to firsthand witnesses. I don't know. These are just the things that we know, right? We don't know what we don't know. We don't know what they've heard that's classified. We know nothing about that. And for him to boldly say that he kind of made a circus of the whole thing. When you read his opinion piece after he left, it just kind of makes it like we're just a bunch of lunatics getting Congress all involved, wasting your money as if we don't have better things to do. That type of thing. And it's kind of all goes back to the Robertson panel in 1953, the ridicule factor. Get it?
Right.
It's stupid to think about this stuff. So as much as the needle feels like it's moving forward, times like this, people listen to someone like him. They're going to say there's nothing here, and it's a step backwards. We seem to take a step forward and 2 steps back half the time.
John, before I go to you, this is just a question I'm going to put out to you guys to consider and comment a little bit later on the show. Do you think something like Dr. Kirkpatrick's statement is because the needle moved too quickly, that things are slipping out of control, that he is going to be the guy that's going to come out and try to put the discussion to bed? That's we'll keep that a rhetorical question. We'll come back to it in a little bit. Don, I'm interested to hear your part, but here's the question to you. In the articles, Kirkpatrick really goes pretty far down the line. And as a guy who did formally train in intel and did it as a collateral duty during my flying duties, I find it interesting that he goes right to the religious zeal. that people have. To me, that is classic sarcasm to really discrediting anyone who has a belief different than what you hold. I'll leave it to you, Don. Pick it up, please.
Okay. Now, to begin with, and Chris, I believe, will verify what I'm about to say. I took all of this and I treated it in my mind like it were a criminal investigation. And I'm looking at some of the principles. I'm reading what they're saying. I'm looking at them speak. And then I'm drawing conclusions by what I observe. Now, originally, I was going to say that Sean Kirkpatrick was a stranger to the truth. But I'll just cut to the nubbin. I think he's a goddamn liar. Now, I've been dealing with people like that in this field for over 35 years. Okay? I've dealt with them before at the Pentagon. I've dealt with them in NASA. I've dealt with every notable skeptic you can name in the United States. And there's one thing that I came to the conclusion of a long time ago. This topic, when you get right down to the nitty-gritty, scares the hell out of a lot of people. Now, with that being said, yes, suddenly since 2017, the end of the year, events took on momentum all by themselves. And I observed things that I never would have believed 10, 15 years ago. I never would have believed what I've witnessed in the last few short years. Now, I thought about this, and I thought about some of the encounters that I have had with various peoples going back to the very beginning of my foray into this field. I've met by now thousands of people, some very highly placed, others just common people off the street. But one thing that I heard continuously, and being a historian of this field, I went back through some of my records. And this is a speculation. I'm going to tell you that up front. There's no way I can prove this, but this is what I very strongly suspect. I've come across some people that have told me face to face that, number one, yes, there are representatives of those visitors that are here. There are representatives that live right here with you and I. You'd pass them in the street, you wouldn't notice a thing. They look exactly like any other human being, which leads on a kind of a side street for a moment, a couple of additional speculations. Either the humanoid form, as you and I are, is much more common in the universe than we may believe. And there's another possibility that some of these people, in fact, may be the offspring of an ancient human civilization that left Earth at one point because of catastrophic events and later returned to Earth with their technology intact. Now, looking at what we've been observing and going back to 1988, 1989, the flavor of the week at that point was something called MJ12. And almost immediately on the heels of the purported MJ12 group, and those were very highly placed people, allegedly with at least a thumb on the UFO topic, there was another group that came out, and they too apparently were very real, although I have not heard anything from those people in years. They called themselves COM 12. Now, we don't have time to go into all of that,
I
but
remember that.
they were competing factions.
Right.
All right. COM 12 was trying to get more transparency on the topic, not unlike what's happening right now. MJ 12 was trying to keep it all concealed. Now, I put all this in my head, and I've been ruminating on it for a very long time. And the speculation I came to, and Chris, with his Marine duty in embassies, Commander Cobra, with the intelligence things that you did, with the intelligence things I did in Southeast Asia, I came up with a theory. I think the people, primarily the intelligence people, CIA, NSA, NRO, DIA, you name it, okay, the ones that seem to really want to keep this thing buttoned down, very well possibly have been infiltrated or at least very much influenced by some of these visitors that choose to keep a lid on whatever it is that's going on. I hate to keep going back to the paper I wrote a number of months ago, but the entire UFO topic, there is a core secret that the powers that be are terrified will get out. And that this is buttoned down to the point where there is a special access program surrounding it. To even acknowledge it is a federal felony under federal statute. So, what if there are individuals, so let me just say that are either influencing the legitimate people within the military intelligence establishment, or there even may be ones who infiltrated those movements, unbeknownst to everybody else, of course, about their true agenda. Kind of like back in the bad old days of the Soviet Union, when you would get a KGB guy infiltrating into some government agency or influencing somebody. Hell, they used to run honey traps. If you don't know what a honey trap is, look it up.
I think
Interesting
most of us probably
reading.
have a pretty good idea.
Yeah,
I could never get one, Don.
but no, I'm serious. I
am too. I was incredibly attractive when I was in East Berlin. When I was in East Berlin, I had all kinds of very good-looking women that were interested in me, and that didn't seem to work when I was back in West Berlin. So,
yeah, but I'm serious about this idea of somebody influencing these people or even infiltrating to the point where they're accepted like anybody else.
Don, one quick point I want to make. Even if we don't, and I agree with you, I really do, but even if you don't delve that far, if this lie, which I think it is, this withholding it, this control of the information because we're not sophisticated enough to handle it, and it's gone on as long as it has, right? The reckoning when that comes out has to drive a lot of fear for the people that are in the ring that have this information. You can agree or disagree with Mr. Grusch or Dr. Kirkpatrick or a lot of other really numerous people that have come forward. But if there is a constructed lie, this will be not so much the actual recognition of what we think, what we profess to know, but when you figure out that the fellow people, our forms of government all over the planet, joined in this and have suppressed people. There's going to be reckoning, and I imagine a number of people that are on the inside are very fearful of that.
Well, Grusch is one of the reasons that I came to this conclusion. The dirty pool that was pulled on that guy, his medical records being released, his attempts to smear the man's name and reputation. Hey, he went to Afghanistan. He experienced something there that bothered him greatly. He came back. He drank quite a bit for a while. No big surprise. When I came back from Vietnam, let me tell you what, I saw some crap that caused me to drink quite a bit for a while.
Sure.
And the bottom line was, up yours, buddy. If you ain't been there, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. And what they did to that guy.
And that in such direct conflict to what we have talked about with PTSD, the open talk that's gone on about that tells you the depth of how much they want to discredit him by doing what they did on that.
Which could be influence from another quarter.
Sure.
Okay. Here's a guy that not only came forward with an intelligence background, he testified in open Congress before the entire freaking world. He's a threat. Let's dispose of this guy, at least his reputation. And if I'm not mistaken, did he not suggest that his life was threatened?
Yeah, they've all said that, though, Don. How many whistleblowers have said the same thing? Lou Elizondo said his life was threatened. All these other people said their life has been threatened, and I believe them. I believe that they probably that's part of the game. I think that they do, and they put a lot of disinformation in about these guys. I actually went back and tried to see how many people agreed with him, or how many newspapers tried to destroy him. And you should see these professors and scientists come out of the woodwork trying to destroy this guy's reputation. I mean, first of all, this guy was an intelligence officer with the NRO and the NGA, the Geospatial Intelligence Agency, and the National Reconnaissance Office. You don't get to those agencies without being a top-notch person.
Sure, okay? Right, and pretty heavily screened.
Oh yeah, I mean they go back to the day you were born, and you don't get there unless you are squeaky clean and you got your shit together. That's number one. So kudos to him. And anybody, and you know this, guys, and stuff. Anybody who have PTSD are going to have bouts of times where they're just, they have a hard time handling going from 0 to 100 miles an hour and to a regular civilian life that it's there. It's real.
It hits me every year around the 31st of March. But that's when when I was overrun up on the demilitarized zone. And every year, and it was funny, for the first 10, 15 years, never bothered me. And then suddenly it started. I don't know why. The further I got away from it, the more it came forward.
Sure.
And I have no doubt that Grusch experienced the same thing. And screw those sons of bitches that would try to destroy that man.
Well, okay. Especially in such an egregious of trying to destroy. Go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, I'd like to add something to that. I think it was twofold. I think another part of the reason they did what they did was because if you're a firsthand whistleblower, do you want to go through that grinding wheel of getting things dug up about you and exposed out there? Most people have something to worry about, and
everybody has a
that was also.
But also, Martin, you're tapping upon something really interesting. If you are a firsthand witness participant in what Mr. Grusch has been speaking about, you are even deeper down the rabbit hole than he was. You have probably been in this longer. You are, quote unquote, the made man. You are, that's where you are within this organization. So if you are trapped like that and you can't speak, it makes sense how he brings stuff out. How Grusch is the type of person that, look, you are young enough, you're close enough to the to surface on this and go do that. Two things I want to bring and start. I'll start with you, Mark. Number one, the OIG seems to be spanking Mr. Kirkpatrick, excuse me, Dr. Kirkpatrick, because his organization that he just retired from, they put on a label that there's too many competing priorities, which this whole diatribe that we've been going over would be do is proof of that, as well as there is this, you're not doing what you're supposed to, which is providing national security. Now, that is, to me, the critical question. That is the critical thing that is really coming to the edge of this, because we're not just talking black programs, although I think that that's obviously part of it. It's not just talking what we're interested in, but it's also is there something else that we're up against here? Or are we at a transition point where we are going to do the things that have to get done on the planet as a group of people living here? There's a lot there. I am really compelled by this OIG statement charging these people. This has not been done. And, Congress, as screwed up as that as a body of individuals formed to help write the laws and govern the country, they have the ability to chase these things down. And it sounds like they have, if you've looked at the news over the last 5-6 weeks. Go ahead, sir. I didn't mean to pontificate too much there. I was definitely getting on up at the pulpit, and I'm sitting back down. I'm in the front pew. Sorry.
Who is supposed to talk?
That's you, Mark.
Me.
I'll pass the collection plate. I'm done preaching. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I was basically just making the point that, you ought to be a little nervous if you're a firsthand whistleblower after, seeing what they did to him. This is something that I think, ties in pretty well. I'm going to bring it up here now. And this is something that Senator Marco Rubio was quoted as saying. He was the vice chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. And he said that multiple whistleblowers with firsthand knowledge or firsthand claims of UFO retrieval and reverse engineering activities have spoken to Congress. And he also stated that the whistleblowers are saying to us what you've seen out there in the public record about legacy UFO programs. Most of the UFO whistleblowers have held very high clearances and high positions within the government. So you ask yourself, what incentive would so many people with that kind of qualification, these are serious people, have to come forward and make up something? I think that puts, that's quite a statement.
So let's talk about this article for the audience. This was in the Hill. Can you bring it up to the top, Martin, so everybody can see it?
Yep.
This is the one you brought to the party tonight. And this is, I think, this is one of those papers, blog sites that I do enjoy reading. This article, Amp gets into it pretty good, and he is really hammering because he's showing the absolute inconsistency. Note that Dr. Kirkpatrick has not called out directly senators and representatives. He alludes to it, but he's very careful not to get himself entangled in that. But he is in direct opposition to what a sitting senator is saying on that. That's an interesting thing to me. You don't normally get to pull that off without thinking you got pretty good dry powder and you've got a pretty good position to fire. And I'm not seeing it.
I'm in my humble opinion, I just want to put this out here. I kind of agree with Don I think there's a war going on in our own government on this topic, because you see so many people on diversified. Now I'm looking at what David Grusch has gone through, and I really feel sorry for the guy, because the guy I truly believe was given information. He's a patriot. He was told, this is what you can say and this is what you can't say. I'm going to put it out there, and he did exactly what he was told. And he took a lot of heat. Now, here's the thing. Now, Sean Kirkpatrick comes out with this cockamamie garbage that there's no evidence of aliens. But look at other people that jump on the bandwagon. For instance, Sean Carroll says Grusch's claims about non-human visitors, the evidence is laughable. Lori Leshin, Jet Propulsion Laboratory for NASA, director for NASA, when asked by a reporter in August if she had seen a spacecraft made from outside of the world, she replied, absolutely not. What a laugh and a head shake. General Mark Milley, he comes out, he's the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff. He says, I gave an interview with the Washington
General Brown
Times.
is now the chairman.
What's that? Well,
Milley's gone.
Yeah.
Milley's gone. I personally celebrated that. Sorry.
Okay. But he said
the guy was an asshat.
I wasn't going to throw the military term out, Don, but thanks.
Yeah. I'm going to finish this sentence now. If he never saw or heard any evidence that would back up Grusch's claim, quoting, unquote, aliens, or there's some sort of cover-up program, Milley added that he was not that surprised that such ideas would circulate, but believed that it's within the military at large. NASA says, we haven't seen anything of this. So you got all these organizations, you got all these people who are in the government saying, well, Kirkpatrick's kind of right. And though I disagree with Kirkpatrick, because you got people on the other side saying, wait a minute, Marco Rubio says, hey, we've got firsthand knowledge. Why are these people so clamoring against each other? Because I believe what Don says, and I believe what I've kind of researched, that what Lou Elizondo said may be true, that if we really find out the truth, it's going to frighten us.
Let me ask you all a question, okay? My speculation, my theory about outside influence from somewhere else. Do you consider that possible, plausible, bullshit? I mean, what are your feelings about that?
Highly
because
plausible.
I have no doubt that somebody is trying to not boil the soup, if you know what I mean.
I think it's plausible, Don. Even from the most critical analysis, you have to look at this and say you cannot rule it out as a possibility, because it fits in a logic, critical analysis of this. That it fits that in a lot of ways. And I think it plays into what Chris has been saying, and then you have been saying, and Martin has been saying over years, not just since we started the show. We are caught up in a cabal of people that want to maintain control, people that are going to wrestle the control, people that are, and yep, I'm convinced that Chris, the only place I'm going to disagree with is, yes, I think it will be fearful. People will have a lot of fear when it comes up, because it's very different. But the people that are determining that we can't handle the fear is much like when parents try to shelter their children from bad things. And then, the story goes on for so long, and then, many, many years later, it comes out, and it can either be, well, I kind of suspected something like that, or it just turns into a tumultuous situation within a family as they wrestle over things that were hidden for years. I think that's part of it. Go ahead, Martin.
I'd like to go into your rhetoric statement or question, because I think it ties in with what we're talking about right now. Could you bring that up again?
Bring it up again. What was the greatness that I had when I was on the pulpit there?
You said, I'm going to throw this out there and we'll come back to it.
Yeah, and I've now been overworked and underpaid, like a good politician. I didn't have that written down.
Well, I think it was something along the lines of, my thought when you said it was, I was going to answer. So I don't know what the question is. Maybe we can reverse engineer this.
Yes, and how apropos.
Yeah, it was because of control. I think that disclosure. I think the reason that there's fear or whatever.
That because
go ahead.
Needle has moved, this is the fight back. That this is the Dr. Kirkpatrick type statement is the things that Chris talked about from the physicist and from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the dear General Milley. Everybody's jumping in to help put the brakes on because too much has gone up. And if folks refer back to what we've talked about in the past, watching what happens on social media, watching what happens when something enters into the discussion, how it goes, how fast it's running around. They may feel that maybe this one went a little bit too fast, that it caught fire too much. That's what it was.
So, and we did. We reverse engineered it. It worked. So I personally think that you're right about that. And I think that there's some control issues, that this is what it's all about. And all these things that we're seeing orchestrated have to do with control of what is leaked out, because it's obviously has been leaked out. So I don't know what they're gearing up to do or not gearing up to do, but I do believe that that maybe a little too much got out, and maybe this is trying to slow it down a little bit. But I do think it's moving in that direction. That's a feeling. And before you start talking, Don, I have to ask you this question. People write me every single show. Where can I read your white paper, your paper that you wrote?
I have been trying to get KGRA DB to get that up very quickly. They promised to get it up a month or 2 months ago. I just spoke with the editor of the KGRA DB newsletter, Renee Barnett, the day before yesterday. And I've got to talk to her again, but they are at some point supposed to get it up on the KGRA DB website. So
okay. All right, I'll just note to direct, but go ahead. You were about to retaliate or something.
No. Hell, I forget now what I was going to say.
Terrible word.
Let's have another reverse engineering.
Someone wrote a comment. Oh, what a bunch of boomers these guys are.
Yeah.
We're the baby boomers, all right.
Yeah. Well, we were the result of a shitty World War II, and when Dad came home, they were looking for a little fun. Voila, here we are. Okay.
And I'm way at the end of the boomer thing. I'm practically an X-gen, so I'm right on the cusp. So I have no excuse. It's all the radioactivity from the open air detonations. That's what you're looking at here.
So now I was talking to my wife earlier today about my speculation, that I laid out, and I still want to hear what Martin and Chris have to say about that. If you think it's plausible, not plausible, whatever. But I said, Vic, look at the entire world stage today. It's as if someone, something, some entity is directing us into a basically national, international state of anxiety. Everybody is suffering anxiety right now.
Yeah.
We are currently involved, thankfully not with troops, but money-wise anyway, and material-wise, in a war in the Ukraine. We are currently involved monetarily and militarily, ordnance-wise, with the war in the Middle East with Israel and Gaza, the Hamas group. We are currently shooting it out with Islamic forces in the Red Sea. I mean, they're shooting at commercial vessels, military vessels, and God save us, God help us. We could literally be on the verge of the Third World War. Okay? China, Taiwan, North Korea, Japan. I mean, you name it. Things are shitty everywhere. And it is an international state of anxiety across the board. Here in the States, inflation, the cost of everything is going up, wages are going down. Do you guys think that is basically something directing this state of affairs? Because it all impounds on this thing, the UAP thing. And for your listeners, Martin, that are objecting to the fact that this has political overtones, how can it not?
Sure.
Everything is politics.
Well,
especially this is politics.
Oh, everything's weaponized. Everything's been weaponized.
Exactly.
We're at the end of a decade. We're of 10 years worth of weaponization of everything. And that may be the outgrowth of what 9/11 caused and the subsequent stuff that went on around that. I don't want to open that entire hurt locker of activities, but we are at a point, but we have always agreed that none of these events happen in separate pools. It's one pond here, and all these ripples do collide with each other. We see, and I think we've all agreed with that this is not just unique separate events. It's happening and it's connected. Chris,
I want to take what Don said. So Don says, Don, you have been told that they are here, walk among us, and they look like us, right?
Yes.
Okay. So Popular Mechanics comes out with an article that says a Stanford professor with CIA ties says aliens are 100% already here. Extraterrestrial intelligence hasn't just visited us. He said they've been here for a long time and still here. And we've had so much disclosure, but we haven't looked at it. Look at the people that have actually come out and said, I got information. We got Paul Hellard, who was a Canadian, like our Secretary of Defense. He was Canadian Secretary of Defense. Right. Edgar Mitchell comes out. Boyd Bushman, whether you believe him or not, still, he comes out and says, I got direct proof. He yanks a picture. Maybe it's false, maybe it's not. But then you got Philip Corso comes out. Captain Newhouse comes out. All these people are coming out with this information that we just throw to the side, and we just look at, David Grusch. There's a lot of stuff that backs up David Grusch. I doing the research on it. But maybe, getting back to that, maybe they are here. Maybe they are influencing things. There's a lot of professors and stuff have said this, that they look just like us, but they're not us. I'll tell you, the first thing when my wife comes back from vacation, she's going to sit down and have a log interrogation, because I think she's an alien too.
Big man when she's out of town throwing something like that out.
Yeah.
But you gotta have a bouquet of flowers ready when you drop that.
No. She's gonna have the big bright light on her, and I'm gonna say, honey, I know you're not from this planet. Okay.
I've already told her not to come back.
But suppose Don is right on this. Suppose these people are right and they say they are here and they do influence our politics and they do influence world order. And maybe the craziness that we're seeing, not just in our country, but all over, I'm sounding like an X-File. But you can't help wondering what the hell is going on.
Chris, let me bring this in, because you've brought this up in the past, and I don't want, God, please, in the audience, hear me with an open heart as I say this. I believe in God. I have proof in my life that God exists. That's the conclusion I've come up with. Okay, and I don't mean to I don't mean to be insulting anybody, but I've had this talk when I've talked to fellow religious people, fellow Christians, that they absolutely not. There cannot be any aliens because of X, Y, and Z, how they come to the conclusion. And I go, well, how can you come up with that? How can you put that to find? But we've talked about a demonic angle to some part of the UFO part of it going on.
Mm-hmm.
Are we also the battleground between
Good and evil?
Good and evil, which is manifested by people that do not are entities that do not originate from this planet. I can't not read that good book and not at least tilt my head to that direction and go, that kind of fits. It kind of has play in there.
The bottom line is this: something created this universe. This universe is so vast, the human mind cannot comprehend the vastness of what's out there. And with that being said, this whether you want to call it God, whether you want to call it a universal force, a universal life force, whatever it is,
right?
How could anyone think, even if they're dead drunk on their ass, that all that space with nothing out there would be nothing more than wasted space? My God, I have no doubt the cosmos is teeming with every type of life you could imagine, and then probably a bucket more that you can't imagine. That is the most narrow-minded,
absolutely,
thought process I can imagine. My God, I've got an 8-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope, and just to take it outside, set it up, and then look at a tiny little piece of the sky and see what's there, how can you doubt?
Right.
I agree.
Why not?
I like that.
I thought I'd throw that one up there for a little while.
That's good. But that's
not?
But
we got to go to break, guys, right?
Yeah, I think we're right up against
it. Let's go to break, and then we'll answer Commander's question.
All right, gentlemen and audience, we'll be back after this break. You're listening to UAP Crossfire, KGRA Radio DB. Thank you so much for your kind participation in the chat room, and we'll see you on the other side. Well, welcome back to KGR Radio DB, to UAP Crossfire. I'm acting host tonight, Commander Cobra, with Martin Lewis. Lewis, listen to me. Martin Lewis. God,
you dip it in your adult beverages, Deuce.
Laughing's catching up with me. Don Ecker and Christopher Arnold. Hey, listen, before we jump back into the show, in our private chat on the show, Mr. Dolan is number 1 on downloads from the state from KGRA. Dark Matters is number 4. Martin Show is number 2. And our beloved little UAP Crossfire is number 3. And I really thank the audience for supporting two
Best
of my co-hosts. Say again, sir?
Best audience in the world.
They are the greatest audience on the planet. It is the truth. But I really do appreciate the audience getting the downloads, participating in it. And one other quick comment. The ad showed Skywatch products. And that's Mark D'Antonio's outfit. There are some really beautiful things that are in there. I usually don't catch the commercial on this show when I'm sitting here, but great stuff. And that's some really nice stuff there. And Mark's a great friend of all of ours and a great guy. And if you want to get something unique, I think that Valentine's Day is coming up. That's a good place to take a shot. And Chris is going to need to do something after he interrogates his wife. Maybe it's one of those mugs and point to it. Is this where you're from, honey? And take me to your in-laws. That might be the thing that you have to do. Hey, now back to the realm of the serious, just a tiny bit.
Well, as you were asking me about good and evil, you can have teeming life all over the world. Doesn't mean that there's not good and evil in every place. Doesn't that mean that a God said, well, I'll make the earth, I'll make Mars, I'll make this over here, I'll make this over there. We don't know what he's done and his spiritual thing. I will tell you this. I won't tell you the details of it because it frightens me. I think I told Don about this. I had a homicide case one time, and I was in an interrogation room with the killer, and something happened in that room, not violent or physical or anything of that nature, that had me having dry heaves in the bathroom after he confessed to killing a child. And that totally convinced me that there is pure evil in this world. Doesn't mean that I don't believe in aliens. I do. But that totally convinced me that we do have evil and we have good in this world. And
let me ask you something, Chris. I'm not delving too deep into the religious part of it. I've always been very comfortable with the conclusion that if you look at the story of angels, this cast of beings that's someplace above where we're at, and there is a conflict because some of them are not happy, not occupying the top rank or not having the top
fallen angels
and the fallen angel, but there's a lot there when you look at the story and the traditions that are passed, especially in the Christian Judeo, but it's also found in the Quran. When you look at those, there are aspects that do fit a lot of the activities and things that have gone on. Because what you talked about, what you've said you experienced there, is almost like an entity energy that is occupied that person to bring them to that point, that they did this unbelievably heinous crime. And if you look at other things that go on, it tends to me, it gives me correlation to a lot of other activities that go on. I've never felt like it, that belief systems could not incorporate this. So I easily see that there is some connection there. And I think we need to all answer up Don's question. Do we think that we have extraterrestrials among us, ETs among us? I believe it. I think it's very plausible.
You want me to answer?
Yeah.
I believe it. I truly believe it. I believe that we have people trying to tell us, and we haven't listened to them in the past. As I said, I given names to scientists, to military people who have said, I worked on crafts from other worlds. I've seen the body. They say, I've seen the bodies. I've talked to these aliens. They've been here. When you get somebody saying, I'm connected with the CIA, and they've been here for a long time, and they look just like us, and they walk among us, and the person who was head of the Israeli Space Agency has said the same thing. These are all credible people. They don't need to come out and be, a super soldier and I was in Mars. It's none of that crap. They're taking legitimate stuff and saying credible stuff. So yes, I do believe they.
Well, how about when we go back to Ben Rich? We've talked about him from time to time. Here's Ben, head of Skunk Works, very deep, obviously in black programs, and some of the things that he just shared towards the end of his life. I mean, you cannot completely dismiss it. Martin, where do you land on this?
It's a tough one for me to swallow. I got to be honest with you. However, I do believe I mentioned it on this show that I talked about, back before I was looking into this topic. My insurance broker, claimed that he was part of the Air Force, a secret division looking into UFOs during napalming and situations in Vietnam. And, when he was getting ready to leave, I asked him, what does a government think that these things want or doing? And he looked right at me and said, we're a petri dish. And that's always stuck with me. And it's always made me think that, are we an experiment are we this or we that? Are we being watched and we're just like the Truman Show or something? It's really it's fascinating, but for them to actually be infiltrated, I know it sounds like science fiction. There is possible, but it's hard for me to really think that it is happening. I don't know. It's a tough one for me.
Denial, Martin? Possibly?
Maybe it could very well be.
Well,
I'm not.
Martin, I
gonna
have a
try to
question
skip that.
for you. Do you? I mean, obviously, you believe that they've come and visited us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Could there,
Whatever they are, yeah.
theoretically be a species that looks just like us? Maybe not totally like us, because we have witnesses that have said, I've talked to aliens from out of crafts and everything else that look just like us.
Maybe we are from them.
Maybe.
Yeah. See, I think that's definitely a possibility that we could be seeded. It's because there's quite a jump.
It has a nice fit there in that Genesis book. It has a nice fit there.
I mean, there's kind of a jump in how we developed. I think it's possible that we were seeded or partially seeded.
Mm-hmm.
Genetics, I'm not really sure, but I mean, I have to have an open mind about this whole thing. But for them to be interacting in our society and controlling things, it's a little hard for me to swallow that part. But I'm not saying that it's an idiotic idea by any means at all. I'm saying that it's almost something, even though.
Do you think Dr. Jacobs?
I think we're being visited by something, but I can't say 100% sure that we're being visited by aliens. I don't know what we're being visited by.
Do you think Dr. Jacobs was wrong with his studies?
Possibly. I don't think he's the end all. I know, I've talked with him. He's been a guest on my show, and I just, I think it's interesting, but I don't know where the proof is when he talks about moving in apartments and things like that. I can't remember exactly his statements.
No, you're right. He has
Yeah.
said that.
Yeah. But, I don't want to say Dr. Jacobs is a liar, but I'm going to say it would be something that we should be able to see some type of proof, or is there no way to have proof? If these things are walking among us right now, why can't we prove that one of these beings or whatever that going into a hospital, is different than the human body? Something's different about them genetically or whatever.
Well, that brings up a very, very interesting thought in me, Martin. Back when, this was 92, 93, at that time, I was researching, oh my God, it was a nightmare too. The idea of human mutilations, okay, for 3 years. And for 3 years, I was, because originally I had started out, I investigated 2 cattle mutilations, all right? And later, when I was talking to John Keel, he mentioned an incident that initially I found unbelievable, but it put me on the path of this human mutilation thing. And I was talking to a court officer back in Long Island, New York, and about this thing, this human mutilation thing. And he told me, and it's apocryphal, I mean, I have no way to verify it. He told me about a body that had been, I believe, if I remember, this is like a long time ago, over 30 years ago, that was brought into the hospital. They examined it, and they found that what was inside the body, this is the way he told it to me, didn't match up to normal human physiology. Okay. And everybody got all freaked out and excited by this. And then they put the body in the morgue. They were going to do more testing on it. And the bottom line was the body disappeared. Okay. Now, what do I make of that? Well, it's in my gray basket. It's an interesting story. Okay. But I have no way that I can verify it or prove it. And cases like that, I can tell you from being a former law enforcement officer, hospitals don't like to talk about that kind of stuff, do they?
Absolutely. Chris? Yeah, that's definitely nothing you're going to play with for all the litigious reasons that our society is put on there. Not to mention, if there is something that is connected and that body has been recovered or whatever, you obviously know that's a fairly high moving organization that is putting the clamps down pretty quick on that.
But what you said made me think about that, and I hadn't thought about that in a very long time. So, yeah.
Do you mind if we go on a little side thing? Because I'm interested, Don, to ask you how would you compare a cattle mutilation? I know Snippy the horse, I think, was the first mutilation that they looked into. But how would you classify a human mutilation? Was it similar to what they talk about cows with, the precise cuts and the no blood and all that type of situation?
Very, very similar. I came up with, I'm trying to remember now how many cases that I came up with, and they were in the type of mutilations that were conducted. I'm thinking of one case in particular. An eyeball was removed. Skin was removed down literally to the bone. This was a male victim, by the way. The sexual organs were removed, and the rectum, and why, God only knows why, was cored out, okay? Now, this is what was very odd about this particular case. The body was apparently of somebody that had been hunting. Okay, it was out in the wilderness. All right, this was, by the way, in Idaho. His clothing, when they found the body, all he had on him was a pair of underwear, which were down around his knees. His feet were bare, no socks, shoes, but his feet were unmarked. Okay, it was obvious he had not been walking naked feet through the woods. And the clothing, his clothing and other things were found 3 or 4 miles from where the body was discovered.
Gee.
So.
And the temperature? What was the temperature at nighttime?
Well, it would not have been comfortable. It would have been in the fall. So the temperature would have been very, very cool to cold.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
and Idaho is northern, it's in the northern latitude.
So Don, in these human mutilations, does it follow the same pattern where many of the animal mutilations that I've looked at, the area around there does not appear to be disturbed? There isn't the normal forensic kind of, there's no footprints. There's no, we've talked about, the lack of the sanguination of it often, it wasn't easily just like dropped because it doesn't have the depression marks. It's like it was placed there. There's nothing else around it. How it is, and this unfortunate victim sounds like this is the same kind of thing that happened. You cannot ignore the fact that the things that you guys professionally operated under are completely void. There's a huge gap there.
Well, you see, this is another reason. Okay, boy, this will take me down a rabbit hole really quick.
Well, Martin did want to make the
My
departure,
fault.
so we're
My fault.
it's all right. Alice, take us down the hole.
I have been told on numerous occasions by people, some that were highly placed, I guess you would have to say, that more than one group of visitors are coming here. Okay. Now, I've heard some really ridiculous numbers. Well, like John Lear, for example, near the end of his life, there were, I don't know, 70, 80, 90 different types of aliens coming here. There were millions of beings living on the moon. Saturn had colonies out there. I mean, some really crazy stuff. But the numbers that I choose to think have validity, there may be around 6, 7, maybe even 8 different varieties of sentient beings coming by here. Now, this is the important part. Several of those groups are said to be very benign or even friendly toward humanity. There are several groups that drop by that strictly have a scientific curiosity. They could care less one way or the other. But there was one group that was said to have a real enmity toward the human race. Now, having been friends with Dingo Swan, the guy that developed the protocols for the Stargate program, the remote viewing program, said that it was his belief that this group of extraterrestrials did not like us because all of humanity, to one degree or another, have some element of psychic talent. That was Swan's take on it. Okay. Now, whether that's true or not, I have no idea. Chris, I'm sure when he was out in the field working, had his gut instinct. That's what I called it, a gut instinct. But actually, if you boil it down, it's some type of psychic talent. Okay. I even use whatever my gut instinct today in a lot of things. So, I have it, I believe, to a degree. Now, these unfriendly folk, all right, these unfriendly visitors would be the type, for whatever reason, that I think would have no problem whatsoever in killing a human being for whatever reason. All right, dissecting them, taking them away. Back in the early 90s, there was a very spooky science fiction movie, and I've often thought about this. I forget now what the name of the movie was, but this cop got onto this case where people were being overdosed with heroin, okay, by this alien. He was using heroin and then draining the fluids from the person's brain. It created some type of an activity, and this substance was very valuable. In other words, they were killing people for what they could provide them. These esoteric chemicals that the human body produces. did any of you guys, by the way, see that movie?
That sounds really familiar. I'm trying to figure out what that movie is. I know the one. It was a made for TV, if I remember correctly.
No, it was in the theaters.
All right, I must have seen
it.
But it was on TV. They had it on TV. Well, anyway, this
Is
would
that
not,
the name of it right there? Down
No.
the bottom?
No.
Okay.
Little mermaid beavers.
Okay.
Oh man.
Oh.
Well, by the way, speaking of beavers, my movie connection sent me a when the zombie craze was really going on a few years ago. Sent me a movie called Zombie Beavers.
Oh yeah. That's played many times here at the farm here in Maine.
Well,
It's a summer favorite.
I started to look at it and I said, my God, I said, this is crazy. He said, yeah, Don, he said, but look, he said, you're not watching it for the beavers. You're watching it for the beavers. There were some really uninhibited.
We should be getting some fan mail on that. That one ought to get some fan mail.
Yeah, I'm watching
Oh,
chat
I
right
think
now.
so.
See what happens with chat on
Let's
that
do
one.
a quick tail slap and move over to back to the whole UFO UAP thing.
Yeah. Before we get to
Martin,
it,
I blame you for this
I know.
zoological wonder that we're now going over.
That's right.
You
Yeah.
know better.
I don't know where we were at before we got into the.
Well, you were the
Human
conductor
mutilate.
that took this train down this track, so you're going to need to turn it around.
I did. So let's see. Have we covered, Commander? Have we covered basically everything that we said we were going to tonight? I'm just trying to remember. Kirkpatrick.
Well,
What was
let's.
some-
Well, I think we have. The inconsistency is what of Dr. Kirkpatrick's presentation. I'm not going to say testimony because it's more presentation in his follow-on presentations, and the article that you sent from the Hill, and then ultimately I'd like one more go around. Before we maybe pop up a couple of the other pictures that we were looking at this week. Are we as the OIG report states, at risk for national security?
Who are you passing that to?
Whoever wants to jump on that first.
I'll just say something, about that. As it was noted in that article, I guess it all came about, during the Chinese spy balloon shoot down and the other ones up in Canada, that, they basically weren't really doing their job. And what their job may or may not be is, when something's unidentifiable, it also could be an enemy incursion of some kind, so they have to really investigate these type of things. I think that's what they're supposed to do, or at least some part of someone should be tasked to do that. And because that's all part of the game. These things are unidentifiable. Why are they unidentifiable? Because we don't know what they are. And could that include our adversaries and having technology that we're unaware of? Yes, that's all part of it. So I think, I don't think that whole AARO was too serious myself. We'll see.
Well,
There's a
I just don't
report
think
coming out.
I don't think its mission, its publicly stated mission, or its publicly concluded mission quite matches up with what they were actually doing or what they are actually doing.
I think Tim Burchett said they were a disinformation organization. He came out and I think at one point I remember him saying on an interview that AARO was nothing more than the big disinformation.
Yeah, he said it on my show.
I think
He said it on my
now,
show Tuesday. Yeah.
Did
I
he?
think
Did he
right
say that,
now
Martin?
we are at a nexus for a perfect storm. If you look at all the things that are going on, not the least of which is the UAP topic, okay, and the Department of Defense, with the current problems around the globe, what's happening in the Middle East right now, and I'm talking about the whole Middle East, what's happening with China and Taiwan, what's happening with North Korea, who suddenly, for whatever reason, decided they want to shoot missiles willy-nilly, okay? I know the Japanese are very concerned about that. And Japan, if you know anything about your recent history in the last 80 years since the end of the Second World War, they have been basically, they went from militarism to pacifism in one fell swoop. And now they're considering rearming again. Japan.
Well, they're considering expanding they're very capable fighting force, but they're purely in a defensive nature. Now they're thinking about committing or having the capability to commit forces expeditionally.
My point. Okay. So things are crazy. If one fool makes the wrong move, this whole house of cards could implode, and that is terrifying.
Here's what I'm afraid about, Don and gentlemen, is I do not trust with the UFO phenomenon, the UAP phenomenon, the military-industrial complex, because I see the agenda going from there's nothing out there, well, there's something out there, and now they're a threat, and now they're a national security threat. And I go back to a project that the military, the heads of the military wanted to do with Cuba. They wanted to start a war.
Mockingbird.
With Cuba. And they did a thing called Operation Northwood. And
Mockingbird.
Kennedy shot it down. What's that?
Operation Mockingbird, a CIA program.
It was what they wanted to do is they wanted to fly a remote jet that was a commercial jet.
Right.
And they wanted to have recordings of people on the jet and blow it up and say Cuba did it, and then we can get into a war with Cuba. And somebody said, Chris, think of the money they would get if an alien blew up a commercial plane. And I went, holy cow, we would all go. We would like go, War of the Worlds, right,
Chris,
Cobra?
This was very interesting to bring this up because it was one of the last things I wanted to touch upon tonight. As you guys know, I'm a huge lover of the Outer Limits series, the original series in the 60s. And they had an episode, I think it was like the fourth show that they showed in the first year, called The Architects of Fear. And in it, it was a group of scientists that had got together, the most learned people and the most skilled people. They drew lots. The one scientist that's picked, he's going to have his body changed, physically altered in such a way to present a very horrible, scary ET. They have a craft. He's going to bring the craft down by the UN. He's going to step out and he's going to make a proclamation that he is hostile and more are coming. And the whole theory behind these scientists that were driving this was going to unite the world. All our problems get pushed away. It hammered me as a pretty young kid the first time I had seen it. And I've seen it probably close to 100 times since then. I think the innocence, if that could even be applied to the 60s, at least it could be applied to 60s television of the time, is an interesting concept. But what you've just said, there are organizations. If we have, and I think we do, I think we have anti-gravity capabilities. There's no doubt in my mind. So why aren't we harnessing this capability? Well, we either haven't perfected it or it's going to upset the apple cart too much for the people that are making money the way business is being run, because this is what we're always up against. There's an order. How many times do we have to hear the New World Order, the order, the world order, all this crap that has to constantly be spread out on, and you are driving towards this. So we have these skirmishes going on, which are a couple of degrees short of turning into a real conflag. And we're playing in a league where the last one ended with what now almost everybody has. And then you have other things that, hey, long as we can keep this fire just comfortably stoked, we can make money out of this. We can keep driving this stuff going on there. And then you take it to the next tier. Well, this UFO thing, whatever people what actually is or isn't, this is a very useful piece of camouflage for us to continue to go do stuff that we need to do. And I don't mean just the fact that you're hiding what's going on. I'm talking about the budget side of this, the money that is just not even measurable. But I'd love to hear your reaction. Intentional, not intentional, organized, not organized, but boy, it sure does fit. Don, Martin, what do you think?
Unidentified, which was on the History Channel a few years ago. Christopher Mellon,
Yep.
Lou Elizondo, Hal Puthoff, the guy from Lockheed, the former, guy that ran the skunk works. I think was Skinner, something like
Steve
that.
Justice or Ben Rich or Steve
Ben Rich.
Justice.
Justice.
Maybe it was Justice.
Justice.
Okay. So at any rate, I got watching that weekly, and I was fascinated by it because of all the people in my background that I've encountered, the idea that a former Undersecretary of State for Intelligence would be on this program, okay, talking positively about unidentified flying objects, I got to tell you, it blew my mind. I never would have believed I would see that. And here was Puthoff, an infamous name in the UFO field, CIA connections, et cetera, et cetera. Elizondo and his purported background. And, and it was all tied together with a rock and roll guy by the name of Tom DeLonge. And my attitude was, how in the hell did this happen? Okay. But with that being said, they had one underlying beat every episode for a couple of years. They kept stressing a potential threat. All right. Now, I found that fascinating. And I sat down one day and I thought hard and long about this. And I came to the conclusion that, number one, they either had a hint of something that was coming toward us, the entire human race, or the possibility that this was the biggest dog and pony show in years that the Pentagon was floating. And then the question was, why? What the hell is this all about? It's either real or it's not. And if it's not, it's some kind of propaganda, dog pony show. There's got to be something here. Well, I got to tell you, I still haven't come to any conclusions.
Don?
But I'm mistrustful.
I wrestle with the same part of it because I see it work up both ways, but if you're going to tell me that extraterrestrials are a danger and you've been fibbing all the way up to this point, I'm curious. I know I smell why you're doing that. Martin, what do you think? You've been patiently listening on this.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought about this thing that I heard Lou Elizondo say. I don't know if anyone in this panel heard him say it, but it was something along the lines of maybe something is here, has been here all along, an intelligence that we're just unaware of. So the last time I had him on my show, I asked him to go into details, and he wouldn't really give the details. But I don't know if has anyone else heard him say that? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
Martin.
Well,
pretty
I remember
interesting.
hearing it the first time that you discussed it.
No, I've heard Lou mention that before. But that falls in line with a lot of professors and everything said that there's been an intelligence here for a long time.
Yeah,
But he also
maybe,
said, Martin, he also said that when we do find out the truth, it's going to be very, very sobering to us.
And supposedly he also said, I mean, I know he said it because I read it on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it today, that he said that 2024 is going to be the big year. Now we've had that. Don, you've been at this a long time. How many times have you heard that?
A lot.
Many times, right? Yeah. So
Yes.
we'll see though if that's the case. But one of the things I think of when I hear something like that, and I was trying to get this out of him, was that maybe we don't sense everything around us. I know our spectrum of vision falls within a certain limit, and but also our other senses can only sense so much. Maybe there's something going on right around us that we're not even aware of. I think that
Are we
could be a
going to
possibility.
drive to the word of 2024? Are we approaching our interdimensional word? Is that what's coming up? I see you smiling.
That might be it. Burchett talked a little bit about that, but that was in one of the skiffs, I guess, the private, something along those lines.
Right. Well, it was the last one that the Congress, when the representatives came out and they were talking about interdimensionality. We talked about a couple shows back, where that was like the new buzzword. That was like it was capturing everything.
Yeah, there was a congresswoman that came out and said,
Luna.
Yeah, Luna came out and said,
Anna Paulina.
He never said aliens. He never said extraterrestrials. It was all interdimensional that he talked about.
And non-human intelligence, that fits in with that as well.
And it could be your presence. It could be it's just outside. I mean, a lot of things fit in that because it's not well defined or well comprehended at this point, because we have a definition to that word, what we think that word means.
Ergo, we have an anxiety-ridden civilization. They can feel the vibrations. May not know what the hell they are, but they can feel them.
Now, here's a question I'd like to pose, because we've seen that during wartime, we've seen UFO sightings.
Yep.
And we haven't yet really heard about sightings with what's going on. But what just happened today, that I just got a message that Israel just bombed the hell out of Damascus, Syria. It looks like we're going into war, because Damascus, Syria just got bombed by the Israelis. Do you guys think that we will now start seeing UFO sightings, or do you think they will make themselves more prevalent?
I will say one thing, and I'd like you guys, your reaction to this. When there's some experience here, it's probably one of the most challenging and the most demanding human events is, combat, battle, that kind of. You see the same thing in extreme disasters. And does that open us up as beings to being aware that you are able to tune into the other dimensions, if that's the term we want to use, or your senses, your inner voice, Don, you were talking about before, your intuition, is it tuned up? Very successful pilots that I were around had uncanny ability to kind of just be intuitive to that. I had other folks that I were around. They could actually interpret every position of all the different people flying in a large engagement. They could make that whole thing work in their brains. And that's why they were incredibly successful. But it wasn't that they were just really, really smart. They could sense it. They could feel it. They knew all the things that were happening around. They could feel the weather. In fact, I remember hearing this described to a person that was flying drones, and he acted like he was in the drone. He was thousands of miles away, but he acted based on very limited information. He could feel the wind. He could feel the crosswind. He knew how he was inside the vehicle, where not everyone has that skill or that ability. Do these events make us more aware of something that's already around it, or is it because that extraterrestrials are attracted to it? There's Mac Maloney's books on UFOs in wartime. He's got 2 volumes out. Unbelievably good chronology of events that go on there. And I mean, this happens a lot. Or is it a combination of both? What do you think, gentlemen?
I think it's possible, very possible, when you get yourself into that mental state. Okay?
Yep.
Here's a very quick anecdote that came from me in Vietnam. And I always thought it was my grandfather, who I lost right after Christmas of '71. I had gone back home on an emergency leave. When I came back, okay, the Easter offensive launched by the North Vietnamese communists began on 30 March. And I'll never forget, I was outside the bunker and I was standing somewhere close to the bunker, but not in it. And suddenly I heard a voice say, "Don, you got to move." And it was as clear as that. I mean, it was weird. Okay. And I looked around and I said, "Help." And I moved.
Yeah.
And we had an incoming round. Okay. So how does that stuff work? I don't know whether it's psychic or whatever it is, but there's a mechanism that I truly believe you can tune into. So there it is. And apparently your buddy, or the guy that was flying the drones, had that ability, I think.
Yeah, I agree. There's more to it than just extraordinary skills. Or, I mean, again, you unite enough people and they intensely meditate, focus, pray, whatever you want, and events, things happen. I think that all fits into this. Martin, what do you think? Are we when you get into these extreme situations like combat, do you think we become more aware, or do you think it's the events attract UFOs? I mean, there's obviously some kind of a connection that seems to be well recorded.
I remember talking to Dr. Michael Masters, whose theory is that, there's time travel, and that it's basically, tourism coming back to certain instances so that they can watch these events happen. I don't know about that one myself. But, I did think it was curious that so many years ago, when I was talking to that guy that claims, he was investigating UFOs during the Vietnam conflict, which you were involved with, Don. And I don't know how many UFO cases were talked about back then. But would you?
We had some up on the DMZ, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know. A lot of people, I think, have an attitude like they should save us from ourselves. I don't think they have. I don't know if they have that capability or not. I don't know if they would desire to. If we are an experiment, if that's what we are, then things are just going to go where they will, which seems to have happened all along. I don't think we've ever had, any interruption of a conflict because of UFO. Have they been, yes, around nuclear sites and have, tinkered with our weapons and things like that? It seems like that has happened.
Sure.
But I don't know.
It's a good reason.
I don't know if there's any reason to believe, you talk about the Foo Fighters and, during these different conflicts, I don't know if they're just watching or what. I don't know why there would be more or if there's actually more.
Well, I have heard a couple of theories as we're coming down towards the end of the show, where competing groups have picked sides. Some use the Star Trek, not to interfere, not to change the course of events, do no harm kind of
Prime directive.
Prime directive, and then you have the other parts where they are actively shaping.
The Klingons are coming in.
So there's good examples out there. I think the X-Files explored a number of those kinds of possibilities where you had benevolent entities among us. That I love the whole series of extraterrestrials, and a bunch of them worked at the Social Security office. That to me was one of the classically sublime moments of the writing on that show. If you could get them at the DMV, and I'm sure everybody here has experienced a moment at the DMV where you're convinced that you're dealing with Chris Prano's extended ET family, since he's made the declaration tonight that his wife is most likely an ET, and he's going to
every time we sit down at dinner, I go, honey, geez, are you really from this planet? So I got to find out for sure now.
Well, I think it'll be amazingly romantic in the month of February with Valentine's Day to give us an update how that went, like a live action news update on how that's going to go.
I would like to correct something that was said a little bit earlier.
Absolutely.
There was no bombing. That article was from 2021. So just to correct that, so people are asking about the information. I saw that it was not in the news. And so that was that article was from 2021.
Well, then my source, who I will talk to right after the show.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay, but we just don't want to get that information out there. And I just thought we should correct it.
Good point, because I was doing a quick side check-in after you said, Martin, on our chat, and I couldn't find anything either, so I was running it down. That would be an incredibly interesting and devastating turn.
Maybe the bombing hasn't happened yet. Maybe it's going to be tomorrow
right. Maybe
morning.
It's a prediction. Oh no!
Oh,
wow!
Look what we did.
I can tell you that my source was an extremely credible, good person. So
and probably still is. You can get things wrong from time to time. That as long as we can square it. That's so, right. One last thing I want to make a remark on. Obviously, to me, and I think I may have shared the article with you. If I haven't, I will dig it up and send it to you guys separately. The PRC balloon was a dry run. That was whatever intelligence. I think Mark D'Antonio brought that up as well. Whatever intelligence they were getting wasn't much, but they were able to watch how the reaction. And there's a lot of things on the spectrum there. One was that our government knew it was there and planned never to talk about it. And if it wasn't because the rancher in Montana had spotted it and had a really good iPhone or a really good clone, was able to get very, very good pictures in that beautiful big sky territory of Montana. And in the world and the age we live in, it was everywhere almost within 30 minutes. It got into the news cycle, and then the whole thing started. So then we watched the whole thing go, and I think that it's fair to say that there were some concerns of taking it down over the United States. We waited until it was in the Atlantic, but there's also some very interesting suspect things that go on with that. I think you had good landmass that you could have maybe brought it down in the States, but were we after covering? Because a lot of the technology that was suspended from that balloon appears to have come from open source purchased what we call COTS, commercial off-the-shelf technology that was available in the States. Was how did it get to PRC? How did they do it? How did they wire that up to go? Then we went through a plethora of what? We were shooting anything that was going on. Hobby balloons, anything.
Within a few days.
We couldn't. We shot one down over the Great Lakes. For God's sakes. We were a week, 2 weeks before we were really concerned. Now, between the border of the United States,
you couldn't find it though.
F-16s dropping this, and this is not an easy shot.
But I'll bet you had some grinning F-16 pilots.
Absolutely, because a kill's a kill. But I'm not sure I would want to paint a balloon on the side of my aircraft. I got to tell you, I'm just not sure. I would want it to at least be portrayed like a Zeppelin, something really scary from World War I. Because if I know the jokesters that were around with me, it would have looked like one of those little birthday balloons. That's what they would have painted on the side of my aircraft. You big killer, you going after the defenseless little hobby balloon that's flying around between the U.S. and Canada. And I don't know if you guys ever saw the interview of one of the groups that they think was responsible for that particular balloon, and the guy was really chagrined. Yeah, we lost the balloon, and yeah, it's sad, but we're going to get the money together, or we're going to do another balloon. And it was surreal for that discussion. I think, though, there's a lot in that series of events. How it was discovered, that it was the deal was, let's suppress. What's the lever? The lever is don't tell the public, just let it go. How we decided we're going to handle it, and then we go completely the other direction. If it's a balloon, it's dead. We're going after it. We shot one down up on the Alaskan-Canadian border. We had the Great Lakes one. I mean, it was insane how that was going. And what was generating all of this stuff coming out? I think other factions within government circles saw this as an opportunity to fuel money for munitions. That whole game is going on there. Cause more upheaval with the present administration. Get more stuff going. The whole thing. Step back and look at that as a small opera to what we have talked about that's been going on since 1947. I think we all agree that that's kind of the touchstone year for doing this. I think it draws strong parallels to what we see in UAP investigation, reporting, analysis, and government involvement. What say you?
Well, I think if I can very quickly.
Yeah, you have 45 seconds to a minute.
We're being watched. You can bet on it because of the things we're talking about. I have no doubt.
Martin?
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing, this whole time I've been trying to pull up, because I was right underneath the Chinese balloon when it was shot, just happenstance in Myrtle Beach. But yeah, I thought that was crazy. Like all of a sudden, within 5 days, there were 3 additional shoot downs or something like that. It was something.
Yeah, 2 others that I'm aware of.
Yeah. So, I think it's really strange that happened in succession like that and then nothing.
Just step back. Step back and look at that whole little opera. It was an amazing thing. Chris?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have satellites that can read license plates, right? So when we have these 3 shoot downs, we can't find 2 of the objects. One that supposedly landed on bare ice, we couldn't find that, and one that went into Lake Huron that for some reason we found everything else, the Queen Mary or whatever down there, but we couldn't find this balloon. But we did. we found all this other stuff, but hell, we didn't come up with this. So I don't trust anything that these guys say. I mean,
that's the word going out the door. Chris doesn't trust
this. In a frozen tundra, something that you shot down.
Greatest audience on the planet. God's peace, surpassing all knowledge and understanding. Want to wish a happy birthday to my son. He'll be 32 tomorrow, Groundhog Day. Happy Groundhog Day to all. Right. And congratulations to Skywatcher for the great run he's making on the shows on KGRA DB. Out here for UAP Crossfire.